Welcome, everybody. You are watching Real Hope with W.L. Laney. My guest today is Dr. David Hanscom. Dr. Hanscom, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
So let's get started with the juicy stuff. Tell me about you.
I practice, I'm an orthopedic spine surgeon. I practice complex spine surgery in Seattle, Washington for over 32 years. And my practice was was trained in pediatric deformity, but it turns out that most of my practice was adult deformity. And a big part of my practice was people with failed back surgeries. And there's even a name for it called failed back surgery syndrome. And people come to me with 4, 5, 6 operations, and they would ask me to come and solve the 7th one. I think the record was 29 operations in about 20 years. And people just have surgery after surgery after surgery. So I would do the surgeries. I came out of
one person had 29 surgeries?
Yep. 20. And so what got me going on this project, because I was zealous. I came out of my spine fellowship on fire. I felt guilty if I could find a reason to do surgery on somebody to help quote fix their pain. But then I found out that the spine surgery success rate for back pain is about 22%. That was published in 1993. I thought it was over 90% because it's a big operation. So I quit. I quit doing fusions for back pain, but I didn't know what else to do. So then I developed chronic pain. In the meantime, I developed chronic pain myself for over 13 years with over 15 different symptoms of chronic pain: migraine headaches, ringing in my ears, burning sensations, burning feet, skin rashes, stomach issues, anxiety. It was unbelievable how bad it was, and nobody could tell me what was wrong. I was still somehow able to practice surgery, but I was really a disaster mentally. I lost a marriage out of this whole thing. And it wasn't until 2003 that I came out of this by accident that I started to figure things out. And in 2009, the data became extremely clear about what happens is that your body chemistry changes in response to stress. So it happens when your body's full of adrenaline and cortisol and inflammatory markers, it changes your body's symptoms. Every symptom we have as a human being is created by our environment. In other words, your body, your brain, through sensory input, vision, taste, touch, smell, processes this input and creates symptoms. So what happened, I was very good at suppressing stress. I was a master at suppressing stress. What I didn't know is that for humans, thoughts and emotions are a threat that you can't escape, but what's even worse are repressed thoughts and emotions. And nobody represses emotions better than a spine surgeon. So what got me in trouble, what made me successful, was being this rock. My nickname was the Brick at the time, that I could bring it on. I mean, whatever there was to be done, I would do it. No big deal. So I went from being I use the word the brick, to panic attacks in one day. It turns out that what a panic attack is just an explosion of your body's chemistry. Turns out that anxiety is primarily physiological, not psychological. It's a response to a threat. It's not the cause. So that's the biggest message I want your audience to hear today, is that anxiety is necessary. If you did not have anxiety, you would not survive more than about 2 or 3 minutes. You wouldn't even breathe. So it's a necessary part of life, and it's a gift, but it's not who you are. So it's a survival response that's massively stronger than your conscious brain. It's your conscious brain is who you are. So the first step is to separate from it, process it. And then what's exciting is we really help people come down the nervous system. The anxiety would drop and the physical symptoms would disappear. All my symptoms are gone.
Okay, so what's causing the anxiety today? I mean, when I think of stress, most people are stressed because something is going wrong at the job, or something is going wrong in their home, or they're worried about their finances. They're worried about all these things, and they don't ever recover from, have a chance to back off and relax from, and that just continues to grow and build. Is that what you see?
Absolutely. That's what causes physical symptoms. In other words, that mental threat. And the first step, by the way, to deal with anxiety is get rid of the word. Anxiety is just, so My cat gets threatened by a dog. She snarls, she screams, her fur stands up. So she has the same reaction that I do to a physical threat, right? So her body chemistry changes, her muscles are tight, she's obviously scared. And then when the dog goes away, she lays down and goes to sleep. Humans have a problem is that thoughts and emotions do the exact same thing to our bodies as a physical threat, but you can't escape your thoughts. So the key issue is, again, stress is, I use the word threat, and this sensation we get is an elevation of your body's defensive mechanisms. We call it the sympathetic nervous system. And so the first thing to do is get rid of the word anxiety and just picture that your body's defense mechanisms are elevated. Anxiety is just that word we use to describe that sensation. Remember, the way evolution works is that the sensation is intended to be so unpleasant that it forces you to take action. It's always going to be unpleasant. You're never going to make anxiety a pleasant feeling because it's supposed to keep you alive, and it does. It's a gift. So this unconscious survival response processes about 20 million bits of information per second. The conscious brain processes 40. It's 20 million versus 40. So you're not going to solve it. You're not going to conquer it. So what you do, you learn to process in a way that it quits creating this chemical reaction. So there's a simple exercise where you simply write down your thoughts, tear them up. And you're not getting rid of the thoughts because there's trillions of thoughts, but you're simply separating from them. So what you're doing is that there's certain exercises that you like do. So what you're doing in order to decrease the sensation of anxiety, simply decrease your stress chemicals and inflammatory markers, then the sensation of anxiety drops down. We try to talk about it, try to fix it, try to control it. First of all, it's impossible. Second of all, it doesn't work. Third of all, if life is good and you're relaxed, your brain is intended to look for danger. I call it your personal brain scanner. So on a nice, easy, relaxed, sunny day, life is sort of good. You start worrying about finances, worrying about your kids. Your brain is programmed your brain is programmed to land in something to worry about, right? It's a survival mechanism. So what you do, again, we realize it's what you have. It's a gift. It's not who you are. There's direct ways of dropping down those body's chemistry, but you also can change the reactivity of your brain through what's called neuroplasticity. In other words, instead of being stress automatic survival response, you create a little bit of a space and then you substitute. As you keep substituting these responses, you're physically changing the structure of your brain.
Okay. Can I ask a couple of questions here?
Absolutely.
So how much of an issue is stress versus old age? As an example, a while back, the doctor told me I was having pain in my feet. He took the x-rays. He told me I had arthritis in my feet. I went out and bought a scooter and used my cane and the walker and et cetera to get around because I did not want to go through the pain of the steroid injections. I didn't want to have the surgery. They told me that was a year of recuperation from that. My neighbor had it. She was surviving on marijuana. And I just didn't want to do that. All right. So then I'm suffering from this pain. When I go somewhere, I have to take the scooter because it's too far for me to walk from the car to the back of the store, even if I can park up close. Just inside the store, it's too much distance for me.
Right.
Okay, so then I'm reading about the subconscious mind and reprogramming the subconscious mind, and I'm reading all these marvelous things that are happening to people. And so I'm laying there in bed and it just dawns on me, now wait, so you are 76. You don't have to have the arthritis in your feet. I woke up the next morning, pain was gone. A couple of days later, sold the electric scooter, and life is great. So was it old age or was it stress that caused the arthritis in my feet?
So I'm going to change the terminology here for a second. So this is not a miracle. This is not about some belief system. So what happens is that as you have some optimism and some hope, it actually changes your body's inflammatory markers. It drops the inflammatory markers down, which slows down the nerve conduction, and the pain does go away. So it's not a mind over matter. It's not psychological. What happens is you understand pain. You have a little bit more control. Remember, the antidote to anxiety is control. So you understand a bit of the problem. Second of all, as you have hope, hope is a big deal in chronic pain because people in chronic pain are trapped. The medical system is not telling them exactly what's going on, and then there's hope. So we do know there's this paper out of Austin, Texas, that shows that a sense of hope and optimism is a major factor in calming down the immune system, which calms down the inflammatory response. And so again, the pain doesn't go away because you imagine it away. It's not mind over matter. You basically lowered threat, you lowered inflammation, nerve conduction slows down, pain goes away. So can I coach you for a second?
Yes, please.
Your story is typical. This is not unusual. It's not a miracle. It's not some act of God. This is the way the body works. Now, a spiritual connection is powerful. In other words, it allows you to look at the universe differently. You mentioned Bruce Lipton before, and I'm actually going to be talking to Bruce here in about an hour or so. He's a good friend of mine. But his thing is, the universe is out there. We are all energy fields. We don't remotely understand why we even have human consciousness. I mean, why can I talk to you with language? Why do I know anything about you? So the human existence is a mystery at best, but he does point out the obvious that each atom in our body is 95% space, right? These electrons are spinning around, lots of energy. So as you're sitting here and I'm sitting here, we're space, we're energy fields. And that's not it's the reason why this table is concrete is because these energy fields are spinning so fast that you can't penetrate them. So the point is that as you have a sense of hope, optimism, it changes your body's chemistry and the pain really does go away. So when the coaching comes in, that you will have the pain come back. And I'm going to make you guess just from a coaching perspective, why would your pain come back?
Well, I guess from a logical standpoint, there's two reasons. I'm getting older every day. If it happened to me because of old age, well, it could happen again. Or I could think more about the stressors and bring it back with stress.
Right. So I don't want to try to teach the whole project right now, but let me encourage people to go. I wrote a book called Back in Control, A Surgeon's Road Without Chronic Pain, that explains why you got into pain and why you came out of pain. The research shows that there's no connection between hip and knee arthritis and pain.
There's no, I'm sorry, say that again,
There's
please.
no connection between the severity of arthritis and pain.
Okay.
People with bone and bone arthritis usually do not have pain. People with severe pain often have minimal arthritis. And the key issue on these prospective studies is stress. And again, not psychological, stress changes your body's chemistry and changes the nerve conduction. So what happens, you get triggered. When I say triggered, I mean, in other words, you're saying threat, automatic survival response, then you have the pain. So what you learn to do, okay, you have the pain. In other words, let's say in a month from now, you have the pain that comes back. So let's say, just for placeholder's sake, that you believe David Hanscom's concept, or just believe in David Hanscom's concept even more, is going to solve the pain. That's not true. The first thing I tell people when they start working with me is, don't believe me. You've tried all these things before. Why would you believe me? So the key is embracing your disbelief and just starting where you're at. So in other words, pretending that you believe something that you don't believe is a problem. So with your pain, you have something in your brain that clicked that allowed you to let it go. You will get triggered again. But what the DOC journey does, it stands for Direct Your Own Care, the DOC journey does, it gives you a sequence of events and teaches you tools that once you're triggered and your body's inflamed again, how do you regulate your body's chemistry to go back to a more even state? So there's a 100% chance you'll be triggered. And then again, I was in chronic pain for 15 years and you get better at the tools. I get triggered less often. I certainly don't stay in pain as long. But if I quit doing the tools I teach my patients, my ears start to ring, my scalp starts to itch, these little skin rashes pop up, my feet start to burn. And so it's just like brushing your teeth is not very hard, 5 or 10 minutes a day. And I'll just mention a couple tools just to give you a handle on it. But there's one called expressive writing. Simply write down your thoughts, tear them up. You can't escape your thoughts, but you can separate from them. The reason you tear them up is right with freedom, but more importantly, to not analyze these things. Because if you're analyzing them, your attention's on the thoughts. We know thoughts and emotion create the same inflammatory reaction that a physical threat does. So instead of using the word stress, use the word threat, because there's obviously positive stress as well as negative stress. The essence of disease, by the way, not just chronic pain, is ongoing threat in the form of unpleasant thoughts and emotions. And even more of a threat is repressed thoughts and emotions. Again, it's 20 million bits of information per second compared to 40. And as you separate this reaction from who you are, in other words, this is what you have, it's amoral, and then you watch your conscious brain over here, it's incredible how quickly people get better. Because you don't have to feel bad about being anxious. In fact, you feel bad if you're not anxious, that maybe you're repressing. And what happens with you, you'll find out that each day goes by, you feel better and better. But then there's also anxiety with success. In other words, when's the shoe going to drop, right? Anyway, I don't want to get into too much detail because it's not hard, but there's lots of layers to it. And so I don't want to take up the time, but just the concept is that anxiety is your body's neurochemical reaction to a threat. It's necessary, it's a gift, it's powerful, but you don't have to feel bad about it. You don't have to identify with it. Remember, the antidote to anxiety is control. When you lose control, you have more of a reaction and you become angry. You're trapped. So that's why I think that figuring out this anxiety thing is really critical for the human existence, because we're a very anxious, reactive society. We keep treating it primarily as a psychological issue. It's just your body's response to a threat. It's a total body response to a threat.
So then what we need to change is our lifestyle.
Sort of. I mean, again, there's always multiple parts. In other words, there's many things work in chronic pain, but nothing works by itself. So there's sleep is number one. Understanding pain is a big deal. This expressive writing, so if I have the book right here, is a big deal. There's a book here called Opening Up by Writing It Down. And it's just a book that documents in over 1,000 research papers, simply writing down your thoughts, does all sorts of stuff. Decreases asthma, improves liver function, improves kidney function. It decreases the viral load in AIDS, HIV. It was the first thing that I did that actually started to break up my cycle of anxiety many years ago. And again, here I'm a fearless spine surgeon going to crippling anxiety in one day. It doesn't make any sense, but it does if you understand that a panic attack is just an explosion of these body chemicals, racing heart, sweating, almost passing out. That's physiological. In other words, it's a physiological response to a threat. So once you understand it's a physiological problem, we do lots of bad behaviors to avoid this feeling, but a lot of the human race is dependent on avoiding this feeling of anxiety. As you learn to assimilate it and bring it into your life in day-to-day life, it's game on. Life changes dramatically.
I read about therapists who are working with somebody who has been hurt by a relative or hurt by somebody, and they advise them to write out a letter of apology or whatever to try to break the ice, and then just rip it up and throw it away.
Right.
Is that the same thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, spend 5 or 10 minutes every day just writing down your thoughts. It can be positive or negative. I will say that most of the research has been done on the negative thoughts, but yeah, writing a letter to the person who wronged you is extremely therapeutic. And again, another topic for another conversation, which I'd love to talk to people on your show about, is forgiveness, which does not sound like a medical term, right? I'm a surgeon. Why would we be talking about forgiveness? It turns out there's lots of research done on forgiveness. 90% of people in chronic pain are still angry at the person or situation that wronged them.
Yeah.
So if your brain is still hanging on to that, why do you want this person that you despise or hate to ruin your day-to-day? Because what happens, that mental connection, again, not psychological, just a mental link to the past, cranks up your nervous system and your body chemistry right now. So the person you like the least now has control of your life. Why do you want to do that? So every person that really deeply heals has always processed anger.
Okay. So my wife read a book some years ago where somebody was talking about what they called hurt pockets. You take all the things that people have done or said, and you store that away, and it's really more damaging to you than remembering it than it was when the actual happened.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So there's a little thing called that neurons that fire together wire together. So remember, pain causes anxiety, because remember, pain just says danger. And people think that pain, and if they touch a hot stove, is it the stove that's causing the pain, or your brain interpreting the impulses? It's your brain. As your brain says the stove is hot. I mean, I put my hand on this table. Why isn't this table hot? It's because my brain's interpreted these signals to be safe. So remember, the way we survive, your brain's processing the environment every second. It automatically keeps you in a range of behaviors that's safe. If you stub your toe, danger. If you smell something that's poisonous, danger. If something's too hot or too cold, dangerous. So acute pain is critical for survival. Unfortunately, with chronic pain, basically the pain system short circuits. So there's ongoing pain that doesn't interpret the signals accurately anymore. So there's ongoing signal coming to your brain, but it's not connected to your environment. Turns out that chronic pain is defined as an embedded memory. It's like an athlete learning a skill that becomes embedded in your brain. It becomes connected with more and more life experiences, and you can't erase the memory. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you know how to ride a bicycle, you cannot unlearn how to ride a bicycle.
Right.
So with chronic pain, it's the same thing. You have memorized circuits in your brain, so you can't get rid of those. And if you try to, you've actually given them neurological attention. So what you're doing, you're creating detours around those circuits and creating a new desktop in your computer in a way. It's like learning a new language.
Okay.
But you're not going to learn French by trying to fix your English. You've got to learn French. Same thing with your life. If you want to create an enjoyable life, you have to create it. You're not going to create that life by trying to fix your pain. So the key issue is neuroplasticity. As you put your brain on where you want it to go, that's where your brain's going to develop.
Okay. What do I do with the X-ray?
Ignore it. I'm serious. There's no connection between the X-rays and pain. Zero. So in back pain particularly, there's no correlation between disc degeneration, bone spurs, arthritis, bulging disc, ruptured disc, and back pain. Zero. Same thing with hip and knee arthritis. The connection between pain and arthritis is almost zero, not perfect. Same thing with your feet. You have arthritis in your feet. And again, I have to say, I mean, as an orthopedic surgeon, I cannot quite let this go. When I first started reading the research on hip and knee arthritis, I mean, I used to do total hips and knees, even though I did mostly spine surgery. But for about 10 years of my practice, I did total hip and total knee replacements. And there's all this bone on bone. There's these bone spurs. It's sort of a dramatic operation, and people do well. And for an orthopedic surgeon, that's about as straightforward as it gets to take something that's broken and arthritic and replace it, and people do well. The fact that people could go to pain-free and not do surgery in this situation just blew me away. And that's where I realized that this whole thing that we call pain is really interesting. So in your feet, do I think the arthritis is contributing to your pain? Probably. But do you have to have surgery because your arthritis is there? Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Let's take this a little deeper, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Dr. Joe Dispenza hit from behind when he was riding his bicycle,
Right.
Broke or crushed 6 vertebrae,
Right.
did not get the recommended surgery with the steel tubes or bars inserted into his back, went
Right.
home and used visualization. I watched a video the other day, and he said the first 6 weeks or what it was, he really had a hard time because he kept, even though he was trying to visualize the right thing, his mind kept going to, well, I'm going to be an invalid, I'm going to be the rest of my life in a wheelchair, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
When he finally got that turned around, then he got better. 12 weeks later, he's back up on his feet and going strong. Now,
Right.
the X-ray showed the broken vertebrae.
Right.
What fixed the vertebrae?
So that's what we call a structural problem. And so when the bone is broken, it hurt, right? So again, broken bones heal. And so once a bone became solid, it's going to quit hurting. It doesn't matter what the x-rays look like. I'm sure his x-rays look like a disaster area. And I mentioned there's a spine surgery with most broken bones that they do not need surgery because they heal. And no matter what the x-ray looks like, people function just fine. In fact, for instance, between your chest and your lumbar spine, the research shows you can document up to 45 degrees of bending forward before you have pain. So modern medicine's got very fixated on x-rays. They're doing surgery in situations that don't need surgery in the first place. His situation with that many broken vertebrae, I'm sure if he allowed to have the surgery done, it would have been about 8 or 10 vertebrae. It would have been a very long fusion, and it would have ruined his life, probably. So in my book, in the first chapter, I don't have the book here right now, there's a Dr. Mark Owens who wrote a book called The Cry of the Kalahari. And he was thrown off of his horse. He broke his vertebrae, was not paralyzed. He was fused and developed chronic pain after the surgery, horrible pain. He had a second operation that made the pain worse. He came to me for a recommended surgery from his neck to his pelvis, 12 hours of surgery. I looked at his spine. He has some arthritis. He has some disc degeneration, but nothing wrong for his age. Within 6 weeks, first of all, within 3 days after he started the expressive writing, his crippling pain dropped down 85%. Within 6 weeks, he had no pain. He's now 76 years old. He's baling hay, 80 pounds. What is it called? Bucking hay, I guess. He's bucking.
Yes, it's bucking bales of hay. I know all about that.
Is that right? 80 pounds of hay, and he's 76 years old. No pain. He's doing fine. So we went from 12 hours of surgery to doing what we've talked about, calming down the nervous system, moving forward. Fine. He's fine. He has no pain. He needs a little Tylenol maybe twice a month after spending a whole day bucking hay, but he's 75 years old bucking hay.
Yes, that's where my original back pain originated, was bucking
Is that
hay.
right?
But I wasn't 75 years old. I was 17 years old, and the bales were 100 pounds or 125 pounds or whatever. But that being totally immaterial at this point. Let me go back to Dr. Joe for just a second. What you're telling me, if I understand you, is that his visualization, his doing all of these things to quote unquote heal himself.
Right.
He relaxed his body.
Right.
And the body naturally heals itself. The bone is going to regenerate because that's how the body is built.
Right. Otherwise, if the body couldn't heal, none of us would be here. Right. It's the species that know how to heal that have survived into this era of the planet, right? So yeah, the body knows how to heal, absolutely. And so, I love his work. I mean, he and I didn't have the injury he had, but it's sort of the same story, just crash and burn, chronic pain. His was more dramatic in some ways, but the bottom line is every patient that comes to me has a story and starts it, and they're suffering badly. And I've said this for a long time, is that the essence of chronic pain is ongoing threat. That could be physical pain, but usually it's mental pain. The essence of healing is creating safety. So as you learn the tools to regulate your body's chemistry, you're now safe, you have control. So the essence of healing is connecting to your own body's capacity to heal. And it's right there. It's much more powerful than what we can do as humans. And so, yeah, obviously we have different styles, but pretty much you're saying the same thing. Visualization, by the way, you're creating new circuits in the brain. One of the core concepts of solving the problem, like I said before, it's like learning a new language. That's what you're doing with visualization, you're creating a new set of circuits in the brain.
Right.
And so what you're doing, this new set of circuits becomes stronger with repetition. And as you use the old circuits less, they start to atrophy.
Okay.
And so you don't fix them, but you just don't use them. They're less interesting. And then the exciting part for me by far and away is that when people learn how to process their anxiety and anger, not fixing it, but processing and assimilating it, they thrive. They become creative. They start living a life they did not know existed ever, even before they get developed chronic pain. But we're all programmed to survive. We're all programmed to be anxious and frustrated. It's a very powerful reflex that takes away from your capacity to enjoy life. But once you de-energize those circuits, it's just absolutely miraculous what happens.
Right. Okay. So another gentleman that you know, Dr. Jeffrey Lazarus,
Right,
he uses hypnosis
right,
to bring about the healing in his practice.
right.
Now, if I'm understanding what you're saying, the hypnosis that he's doing is really just calming people's nerves, taking the anxiety away.
Can I coach you again a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. So the words make a difference. So what he's doing, the answer is yes. But there's a nerve in the body called the vagus nerve. That's the parasympathetic nervous system. It's extraordinarily powerful anti-inflammatory. So what you're doing with medical hypnosis, you're stimulating the vagus nerve. You're actually very anti-inflammatory. You really are calming down the body's inflammatory response. The reason why I'm being a little bit particular on that language is that, I mean, as a surgeon, I was one of those people who thought, well, mindfulness, meditation, hypnosis, this is some sort of psychological issue. It is not. You're stimulating the body's physiology to go to anti-inflammatory instead of inflammatory. It's a direct connection to the vagus nerve. Humming, for instance, if you just do low-grade humming, stimulates the seventh nerve in your throat, which is next to the vagus nerve. That's anti-inflammatory. Slow breathing between 6 to 10 breaths per minute for a couple minutes stimulates the vagus nerve. Breathing through your nose actually stimulates oxytocin and nitrous oxide, again, very anti-inflammatory. Certain pitches of music, like lullabies, they constrict, they tighten the muscles of the middle ear, again, stimulates the vagus nerve, anti-inflammatory. So this all directly affects your body's physiology. Medical hypnosis, I think, is extraordinarily powerful because it's a deep state of relaxation. And your muscles are, I mean, I even do a thing called active meditation, which is one of the tools that I recommend early on, where you just drop your shoulders for a second, take a deep breath. And I used to do this in the office all the time with my patients. And just for 3 to 5 seconds, put your mind on something different. So what you've done, you've now changed the sensory input from your brain from racing thoughts to tight muscles to now relaxed muscles, and you flip the switch. So mindfulness meditation are not psychological constructs. They, again, directly stimulate the vagus nerve. And when my patients understand that what they're doing just isn't some abstract practice that might help their pain, that they know that this practice is going to decrease my inflammation. And most of the time it works, some days it doesn't. But at least I know I did that. In other words, I did that part of dropping down the vagus nerve, is that motion of breathing or whatever. Lack of sleep, highly inflammatory. They did a study out of Israel showing that lack of sleep actually causes chronic pain, causes it. They found out it's not the other way around. Lack of sleep is a bigger predictor of disability than actually buttocks or leg pain.
Really?
Yeah, so we work on expressive writing number one, but the first factor before I did any surgery the last 10 years of my practice, people had to be sleeping between 6 to 8 hours per night before we would do the surgery. Most of them canceled their surgery. Pain went away. I mean, I was operating on less than 5% of my patients the last 5 years of my practice. I put myself out of business. The only reason I could stay in business at all because I was on call and took care of people that were on IV medications, heroin and stuff, and they would get infected spines, which I think is incredibly tragic. But yeah, from elective surgery, I was operating on less than 5% of my patients that came through the door because their pain would go away.
Okay, so take a big, broad picture.
Right.
If the entire medical field could adopt your practice, would that drop the cost of healthcare by what?
80%.
90%?
80%, at least. I mean, you could literally change healthcare really simply with one move. Triple or quadruple the reimbursement for doctors talking to their patients. Because remember, it's safety versus threat. When you feel safe, you feel heard, you feel believed, you understand the problem, that helps you feel safe, right? So your body chemistry makes profound changes to anti-inflammatory cytokines. You have growth hormone, oxytocin, dopamine, a wonderful chemical bath that makes your body function really nicely. The first place that safety has to occur is in the doctor's office. If you're being rushed to an appointment, given random treatments, you don't feel safe. In fact, medicine now has become very predatory. And I actually look at our societal disruption right now, homelessness, et cetera, on the medical profession, and not the doctors themselves, but the business of medicine has kidnapped us. So they will not let us talk to our patients. They hated me. They wanted me out of the hospital so fast as it was unbelievable, because I would have people with 10, 20, 30 years of chronic pain, costing the system hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for between probably $500 to $2,000, these people came out of medical care completely. Their pain went away. Hundreds of stories like that. The reason why I finally quit spine surgery is that over the last 5 years, I was seeing 3 to 5 patients every week having surgeries recommended on normal spines for their age. And the downside of a failed spine surgery is brutal. The cost of a lumbar fusion for back pain is $100,000. The chances of people getting better with just these really simple self-directed tools is high. So I would estimate we have over 1,500 patients conservatively that have gone pain-free. Between $500 to $2,000, self-directed, you don't need pain clinics. It's not a miracle. You're just using well-established, documented medical treatments.
Okay.
So again, my theme has always been implement what we know.
Okay. So you've discovered these circumstances with your own study, your own experience. How
Right.
many years of medical school did you go through?
Well, 4 years of medical school, 7 years of residency after medical school. So that's 11 years of training after college.
And at an approximate cost today,
As far as the actual
what
cost
would
of
it, yeah, what would, if let's say my grandson wants to become a surgeon, what's it going to cost him?
probably starting with college, probably $300,000.
Okay. And what would it cost if you were to just sit down with my hypothetical grandson and teach him how to work with patients, how to reduce the stress, how to in quote unquote heal themselves? How long would that take you?
Well, it's a tricky question because I think that the answer to chronic pain lies in primary care. As we go to pain clinics and rehab doctors and pain specialists, the bottom line is the solution to chronic pain is wellness. So
Okay.
yes, wellness coaches can do this. I think primary care is very well equipped to do this. The problem is they're not trained this way. And the way I design the process, there's the book and then there's the doc journey. And so what it's intended to do, if you're my primary care doctor, is to have the responsibility for healing on my shoulders, not yours. And then what happens, I come to you as a patient and there's prescriptions to be written, there's physical therapy to be done. So you become a support system, cheerleader, and quarterback, but the responsibility is on me. So it makes your job much easier. I have control. I make the decisions. You help me along. And so again, psychologists can help do it. I love working with chiropractors, physical therapists, massage therapists, medical hypnosis. They all get it. The groups that's the farthest behind in this process right now is the medical profession. And I don't know why exactly, because the data is thousands of research papers says this is the way we're supposed to do it. So the answer is we have lots of health coaches that are healers. So the answer is yes, your grandson can learn this in about 2 years or less. We have people, I always recommend, I have several people on my roundtable on Tuesdays and Thursdays that have done so well. They're getting ready to be coaches themselves. They've done other live coaching. So I also have a 4th-year medical student on my roundtable. Her name is Gigi, and she's had chronic pain. She's actually going to share her story with their group here in a couple of weeks. And there isn't 1 minute of her medical school training that taught her any of these concepts. And she's blown away. She's, first of all, getting better. Second of all, this is all basic physiology, about the autonomic nervous system. But some of my medical school were taught in silos about pathology, histology, physiology, but we don't link them together very well. We're not actually taught to think correctly. And I'm embarrassed because the stuff that I've discovered, I've learned more in the last 12 months than I've learned in 30 years. And it's all there. None of this is new news. So what we're doing with our work groups, we're just taking these silos of deep data, incredibly brilliant data, but we're just linking them together. And that's what's so exciting for us right now.
Okay. I haven't even been keeping track of the time. How are we doing?
Well, I don't have a deadline. Today I don't have a deadline right this minute, so we can whatever works for you.
All right. So what's the most important takeaway for our viewers today?
It's threat versus safety, with mental threats being the bigger problem than physical threats. And you cannot escape your consciousness. So as you learn the tools to calm yourself down, it's game on. It's a self-directed process and you have control. Chronic pain, particularly mental pain, is a solvable problem.
Do you have a name for your program that you promote on your website? Where I've clipped part of it out here. Understand the nature of chronic pain, video tutorials, well-tested learning sequence, tools and strategies. Does that program have a name?
It's called the Doc Journey. Then DOC Journey stands for the Direct Your Own Journey.com. And it's a 1-year process. It includes a guided course. It includes the question and answers twice a week. It includes video tutorials, webinars, access to me. And it's about 9% self-directed. What I like about this new process is that it's a straight line process with the teaching, adding depth to it along the way. And when I actually had a roundtable this afternoon, and I looked at the roundtable, and we've been at this for about 7 or 8 months, and over half the roundtable is doing incredibly well. So with repetition, I've now learned the sequence that's better, and of course, a lot more to learn, that have mirrored the successful patients' journeys. And we're just getting better at it. We can explain it better. We can get people through it faster. We find out that in the workshops, in these Q&A sessions, that people heal each other. So yeah, it's been an incredibly rewarding, wonderful process. So it's called thedocjourney.com.
All right. And your website, the best one for them to go to is the backendcontrol.com.
Yeah, that's the overview of the services, and then you can get to the Doc Journey from there.
Okay. Dr. Manscombe, thank you so much for being with us today. It has been very enlightening, informative, and well, what shall I say? Going to live to be 106, and I don't have to worry about arthritis coming back.
No, that's not what I said. When it comes back, I mean, I'd love to have you on the Doc Journey yourself, because it's not very hard. You'll see what I'm talking about. So once people understand the concept, it's actually disturbingly simple. So what'll happen, it'll flare up, but you'll have the tools to drop it back down.
Right.
So I always tell my patients that come in, they're so excited, they're happy. I say, look, you're going to go back into pain. It just always is that way. But again, you go in less often, you come out more quickly. I had a whole conversation today with my work group about, my own triggers. And my wife pointed out that I used to be triggered for weeks at a time. Now it's maybe 10 minutes, sometimes longer. And it's all based on awareness that I was triggered. And before I went through this process, I didn't even know what a trigger was. My whole life was a trigger. And so, yeah, I'd encourage people to look at it. It's really very self-directed and, again, disturbingly simple. And I quit my practice to bring this out into the general public domain, because it's really a very rewarding experience.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the program today. Thank you for being with us. And remember, everybody, it is Dr. David Hanscom, MD, and the website is backincontrol.com. Thank you for being with us today. And remember, with hope, anything is possible.